review these drawings. And
Bye, good to see you.
Wow.
Good evening. This is the meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry on Tuesday evening, August 8, 2019. We have 10 items on the original agenda. Item number 2, 115 Broadway, which is the Cabrini of Westchester, has requested that we continue their public hearing until our next meeting, and we will take action to do that. I'd like to move to open the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is he on the agenda? Yeah, he is. Another announcement this evening, much to our regret here on the board, I need to announce the resignation from the Planning Board of Anna Markowitz, been a member of our board for a couple of years. She and her family are moving upstate into Ulster County in connection with a new position for Anna. She will certainly be missed by us and others in the community where she's been very active and visible. So I think you will become an active member.
thank you.
However that process happens, it will happen. The first item on our agenda is item number 1, to adopt the minutes of the Planning Board meeting of June 6, 2019, and July 11, 2019. As always, I would like to thank the village clerk for the time and effort that she puts in on our minutes, as well as the minutes of 4 other boards, which is just a small part of her position responsibilities. So, thank you to Liz. On the minutes for June 6, 2019,
I haven't seen those.
you haven't seen those.
Yes, I have.
Well,
June?
June 6.
I have July, where was missing.
I have 2 comments. These were 19 pages of minutes. On page, on page 3, if you look at the last bullet point in the top, it says, it ends up saying, Mr. Peregrine said he would submit, and then, I don't know whether there should be a period there or whether there was something that he was going to submit, but it just caught my eye. On page 10, an even smaller, in the first line, it says, and Mr. Ron DeRusso were, and I would say he should be identified as Ron DeRusso, comma, property owner, comma, were. So, with those changes, I would move to approve the minutes.
July, they're June 6th,
June 6th,
second.
the second one, yeah. Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
I'm going to
Thank-
abstain because I haven't seen them.
Thank you very much.
July.
July minutes, where are my minutes? The July minutes, the minutes of our board meeting of July 11, 2019. I have reviewed them and I have no additions or corrections. Does anyone else have any
I reviewed
comments?
them, like, nope.
Just one thing, it's on page 10, the second line from the bottom. Mr. Douglas said his property would be in the area and the study being done for the Old Town. I think it should just say downtown historic district instead of Old Town.
Yeah,
That's
because
sort of-
Old Town's not really a term. we
No,
use,
that's
uh,
not a,
Just so it should
I
be
kind of noticed that too.
downtown historic district.
that's good, thank you.
Be specific.
Is the word Old Town used?
That's how it's identified as individual.
I don't
It's
remember
in neighborhoods, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing.
that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, good. So maybe it should stay.
Yeah.
As identified individual.
I'd like to acknowledge the receipt of two pieces of correspondence. One is from the County Planning Board, giving their review of the Cedar Commons application currently in front of our board. And second is a letter from Niall Kane, who's the junior warden of Zion Church, of the Zion Episcopal Church, also writing with respect to the application of 55 Cedar Street. For the record. Move on. Item 2, as mentioned, will be continued. Do we need to make a motion to continue that public hearing at our next meeting?
You don't need a motion, you just need to announce the date of that
Oh,
into the record.
What's the date? Just a
The
minute.
5th, did you say? September?
September 5th.
September 5th?
That's our next regular meeting is September 5th.
5th?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, September 5th. So the continuation of the public hearing for site plan approval for proposed new parking area, this is at Cabrini, will be carried forward at our meeting of September 5th. Boy, September already. The next item on our agenda is item number 3, 40 DeVoe Street, continuation of public hearing for site plan review for proposed redevelopment of property as 3 attached single-family residences. We're ready.
So Pat Sunshiner here from Gotham Design and Community Development. Thomas.
Thomas Delaney from Hudson Engineers.
And the client, part of the client team, Michael Leonard. Cool. So last time, we looked at a number of different options, and the board kind of culled it down to 2 that they wanted us to develop further and to, I assume, compare. One has been referred to as the townhouse option. The other is referred to as the courtyard option. So what we've done is we've taken a look at the different, ways that works, and hopefully you'll see the differences and figure out which one you really want to do. Just quick, this is Depot Street, which ends down in Jewel Park, parallels Maple, and comes off of Storm. It's one of the oldest sections of town, and I was involved in real estate. I'd say it's a neighborhood in play. There's a lot of properties that are being sold. There are people who are fixing them up. It seems like Depot is moving in a very good direction, which I think should be beneficial for the project, and I think the project will be beneficial to that concept. So this is the submission that we made, which all of you should receive. What we did is we compared the 2 through that submission. This is the plan that we submitted to the townhouse. This is just a little larger. 3 townhouse units side by side. They step back from the street. They provide an exterior parking space plus an interior parking space. All of the parking in the front, minimizing the amount of site coverage. A large green area in the back, the existing garage removed. The ability for all the units to go directly out to the back, which is clearly a feature and something that gives value. The floor plans, I don't know that that's something you really need to deal with, other than to understand that what we're proposing are all 3-bedroom units. Plus, there's a finished area in the attics, and there's a small room that's down in the lower level of the basement. They're nicely laid out units. They're simple. They're not particularly large. It depends on your measure, I guess. For what we've been seeing in Dobbs Ferry, they're not particularly large. They're around 1,900, 1,950 square feet. They are efficient and they fit in nicely when gathered like this. These are the elevations, massing that we developed. Obviously, there will be more work done at some point on these, but we want to know which direction we're going first. This is just an enlargement of that front, showing as the units step in, they also step down the street. The garage, these are 1-car garage doors. Those are set back in 4 feet. So effectively, what happens is there's this kind of play of massing, jogging in and out, and the garage doors jog back in to align with the unit that's next door. So there's a kind of relationship and weaving, which we think makes it work fairly well. Each one of the entrances is demarcated by a small court. So I think it would fit in very well with the character of Devo. The other unit we've referred to as the courtyard units. This maybe I'll give a little bit more attention to because we did present the other last time. The way this works is one unit is in the front, one unit kind of runs the other direction, forming a courtyard with the third unit. All of the cars are in off the courtyard. All of them are two-car garages, so all the parking is inside. The size of this courtyard is sufficient to accommodate people coming in and going out. There'll be no room in this courtyard for anybody to park outside. So all of the parking would have to be in the garages. The entrance to one unit is here. The entrance to the other two units is here. Although if we go further with this, we've been looking at what happens if we move this garage in further and have one entrance on this end, one entrance coming in that way, and then the other here. This unit, by the way, also has an exit out to the courtyard from the lower level, so all three would be able to access the courtyard. This is, I should have put this plan, shows how that all works. These are the floor plans. Again, the units are effectively the same size, around 1,950 square feet. All of them are three-bedroom. They all have a small area in the attic. In this one, we get a smaller room downstairs because, of course, we've got two-car garage instead of one. This is the massing that we looked at with it. The idea is to kind of wrap the outside, have that be a relatively dark exterior, and then have the interior courtyard be stucco. So we feel like a bright open space. We think we can make that work fairly well. Again, this is very simple at this point in terms of the way the fenestration and the massing and the detailing. But we also think that if you look at the other houses on Devo, that that's an appropriate way to approach. Even the older houses have pretty much been simplified in their massing. This is, and detailing. So this is the two side by side, relative, the grade here and the grade here are parallel to one another. So you get the understanding at this end, this sticks up a little further, but this also kind of jogs itself down and follows the street perhaps a bit more. This is again putting the three townhouses in their massing compared to the courtyard. You lose back green area in this scheme, but each one of these units has an exterior terrace area that would work off of them. And of course, the way I look at this courtyard is, you've got a 4-year-old who wants to be riding a bike or doing something that would be a great place for them to be playing. I know it's weird to say to be playing with cars coming in and out, but 3 units, I think they would understand that they're not speeding in that location. I know that speeding was interesting. I had conversations with people about Devo, and there's a major concern about the way people speed now. And I think it's great that they have that concern, but when I notice what speeding is on Devo, it's when somebody's going about 20, 25 miles an hour. It's a really nice, slow, quiet street, which it should remain. This was the streetscape that we did last time for you. We showed the townhouse option. We revised that to show the courtyard option, and then we kind of blew those up again so you could see how they related one to the next. We then decided to kind of take a look at this a little bit more to 3D. I can put the 3D model up if you guys want to spin around, but I found that it's often easier if we kind of show you just some 3D views as we go around. These are the townhouse units. This is all in the front. This is looking down Devo. This is the house next door, the building next door, the way this kind of sits in. Looking up Devo, the way that these kind of roof lines, a lot of these go parallel to the street, but there are enough that have gables fronting it. We think it's a good mix for it. We do show trees in this, which is that's intentional. And part of the idea here would be to reestablish a kind of green canopy on Devo. I think it's something that would really help the character of the street. This is the back. You notice the topography coming down. It's actually, it follows the street, and it's actually fairly steep. But we've managed to kind of work that through. This is again looking at the back, and this is looking at the back from the west. Then we come in, this is the courtyard unit building. So this is the front building, middle building, back building. You get that form of gable, which repeats in other places in the neighborhood. You've got that, which you actually would feel like there's more space between this corner and the building. And of course, then the building also sticks out behind to make room for the courtyard. So, it's a toss-up of which one feels like it gives you more space. This sits way further back on the property. So the other people who have backyards would be looking down and seeing the building instead of the backyard. So it's kind of a toss-up, I think, which is the better. This is, these are all kind of parallel views to what I showed on the townhouses. That was from the east, this is from the west. This is looking down Depot. This is looking up Depot. This is the view from the east aerial, so you see the courtyard and the way that massing works. This is the back from the east and the back from the west. Anything you want to see again? Want me to try and do it in reverse?
Well, thank you for doing all those views.
Yeah,
Very
that's
useful.
very helpful. That's very helpful.
So I'll just kind of stop at some point here, maybe, and questions and answers and all of that.
Well, I think I was the one that was at least interested in seeing the courtyard version with a little more detail, and I like it. I think the way you've got it set up, it does fit the streetscape well in terms of the side of that one building. But I think on balance, I would prefer the one that you're showing now.
So you want to take a vote?
I'm just the opposite.
Yeah, are you telling me you prefer
He prefers the
this?
Townhouse.
The townhouse, yeah.
So first of all, I just want to also say, I really appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. There's like nothing else. We'll see how much agreement or disagreement is, but there's nothing else that we could ask for in terms of the presentation. I prefer the.
Yeah, let's go quick.
Yeah, yes, you did. I prefer the courtyard scheme. But I guess that's what we'll
In the
decide
courtyard
tonight.
scheme, where would people that were visiting, where would they park?
They would park out on the street. In the townhouse scheme, we've got extra room adjacent to the car, so you'd be able to get a guest pulling in off of the street in addition to the other car.
So one in the garage, then you show one
One in the garage.
outside, and then if,
The space of this, George will quickly say, I don't think you've actually got enough, but we actually do have 16 feet. So somebody pulls up in here, you've got the ability, you're kind of tucking the front of the car back in, you've definitely got the ability to pull another car off the street.
And just to be clear, what you're looking for tonight is just clear direction about which of these two to develop to the next
I
level?
would not mind if you approved it, but since we're not there yet, and he isn't here, and I'm not really certain he would, so I'm just looking to move forward, whatever that means.
Right.
Yeah.
Patty, can I see that view that, I guess it's gonna be a 45-degree down view of the courtyard, so I can get a feel for what the rear yard massing is like?
This one,
No, it was from the street side.
from the street of the courtyard.
Well, it was a view from above. I thought there was
think
one.
you just went
Yeah,
by
there
it.
you go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, right now, some of these go pretty deep back, this house next door, but we're effectively a unit further with how far that goes into the back. Now, in other ways, that probably gives some privacy to the yards of the neighbors on both sides.
What happens back on English Lane? Is there,
We comply with the more.
no,
than
I'm just
one
curious
process.
as to them, I'm not gonna ask you to do the massing back there, but maybe you could describe what you just beyond the back
Oh,
of
you
these
mean the
lots.
buildings back there?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can take a look at it. I haven't done measurements of any of that.
no, you don't have to, I don't think you have to, if you just remember if you can just describe, is there another house right at the end of English Lane?
Yeah, it's a yard.
Uh-huh.
Actually, what we might be able to tell from is, no, it's a good one. So we get to that yellow site that's provided by Town of Greenberg.
Oh, that one.
So what you've got here is, there's a house right here, building there, you've got the yard, there you've got another house that's right back against that.
Wow.
have all of this kind of tight up by the street. You know, we thought the idea of this band of green openness coming back through there was positive, but of course, there are plenty of examples of other buildings where
Yeah.
it's going into the backyard.
And those are houses? I mean, is it a garage in the back there, or?
English Lane is an interesting, I was gonna use cacophony, that's not a very nice thing to say. It's a real mix of different things. There are like kind of industrial things that are back there, there are businesses, there are residents, there are apartments. It's very cute in a way, English Lane, you know, if Devo takes off and becomes kind of, lots of buildings that are fixed up, be interesting to see if something similar happens on English Lane, if done right. That could be, like, I forget what that muse is called on the west side in the seventies, I think, or is it in the nineties?
In the nineties, on 95th Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Medieval or something? you mean?
Yeah.
It's like a Tudor,
Yeah,
it's like a
Tudor,
relic.
Tudor, something, Tudor.
So, you know, all of a sudden, English Lane became this like little back.
I wouldn't hold your breath
Ren
on that.
Fair.
Different
I don't think there's
different
any
scale.
businesses there. I think it's all just multifamily houses. There's a business on an alley next to the deli, the Park Deli.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not really on English Lane.
Okay.
Right.
It's but to the north of it, I mean, to the east of it.
So this is the bill, right?
Do I read this correctly? There are no variances
That's the
required?
There are no variances
Yeah.
required
So
for
it's like
100%
here.
compliant. We have
It's
the-
underneath. the
Except
Park
that
Deli.
the sky
Yeah.
exposure plan, I guess, doesn't really
Well,
work here,
that's not a
right?
variance.
Right,
Can't get a
that's a
variance for sky.
discretionary thing by the AHRB.
But we're fairly familiar with people, you know, village staff who are dealing with this on a regular basis have for a long time pointed out that the sky exposure plane almost would never work in a neighborhood like this.
Can you go back to the sheet that shows the two elevations of the entire street side by side? Right, there you go. That one.
I mean, you've got situations like this, which we felt was very similar, and on the other side of the street, there are more of those. So you've got a lot of places where you've got buildings that have a width facing that street. Now, this is on the corner, it's actually fronting the other side, but it's still the facade that faces, you know, towards Devo. I am pushing that it become Devo
Yeah.
instead of Devo.
I get it. I'm old enough to get it.
I'm going for it.
I don't know. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this application?
Anybody else on the board want to have?
Well, they have a chance to, but
I have to say, I personally like the courtyard option in the last meeting, but now looking at this elevation, I like the repetition
Oh, really?
on the first line, but you don't like it, Bob.
But, well, I don't know, but this is a great, he's given us two choices.
Yeah.
We can just vote, right? The five of us around which one we prefer.
we'll get an answer
I
because
mean, you actually get an answer tonight, so it should be like, Not quite a first.
Let's not forget also the architecture review board has looked at these, and they have a clear preference.
I know.
well, that's
Did you show them both, Patty?
We showed them both concepts and the massing. We haven't shown them this presentation, but assuming that we have to go to another meeting because there's engineering to be resolved, we can always plan to be, at whatever the ARB next week. You know, I know they're not meeting this Monday, so maybe if they're meeting the second, meeting of the month.
They show elevations of the courtyard style? I know I know they did recommend, they said they liked the townhouse style, but I'm just wondering if they saw the courtyard style.
Not to this
I
level.
doubt
We
they'll like
certainly
it,
do
but-
go in and get their intake on that. Right, I am imposing upon them to do that, because they were fairly clear that they're done. They were happy with it, but, and I've since talked with Ayer and Mike before about it, so, but that doesn't mean we can't go and show them what with that.
Well, for me, the trade-off seems like the courtyard version, I feel like it integrates better with the streetscape, actually,
Right.
at least from a massing standpoint. The trade-off is you're covering a lot, right? So the backyards don't integrate as well. And, I don't know that I have any really strong feelings around that, but that's sort of what I feel like
yeah, I think
the
you're right.
trade-offs are.
You're right.
So that was
Everyone has opined. I would like to have the engineer, engineer from Mount Hudson, just kind of update us on where we stand so that George can feel really comfortable heading into the next meeting.
All right, again, I'm Thomas from Hudson. We did preliminary testing on site. We have plenty of depth for stormwater system. Our perk rates were good. So we're intending on doing a infiltration system. And we don't see any major issues with that.
Any issues with utilities?
We haven't gotten a chance to look at that yet. It's fairly new to us, this project, so as we look into it, we'll keep you updated.
Is there any challenges with the driveways being tiered along the road?
Not really. It more or less is the same pitch to the garages.
But that means, but it is true, there'd be like essentially 3 curb cuts,
Yes, yeah, there will.
as opposed to 1
Right,
in the courtyard.
yep.
with the courtyard style version, do you have enough room in the backyard with clearances from the foundation and the property lines?
Yeah. Yeah, we have the space. George might want us to do, like turning radii diagrams to show that that will work. But we have 40, I think 46 feet in both directions. And usually
They're gonna
we
go in there.
46 feet.
They're gonna
including
drag-
parking space.
Drag the hose from the
We have
street.
to back out, so 46 feet of clear space should be pretty good.
I was referring to the retainage, the stormwater retention system in the back.
Yes,
You have enough
there is
room.
room for a system in the rear,
Good.
but there's also in the courtyard, we could use that area as well.
Yeah, I like that.
What's there's quite a bit of impervious surface difference between the two. Do you have any quick calculation as to what that is?
Yeah, I think we submitted that. With the courtyard, we're 53% impervious, and with the townhouse, we are 37%.
Is the courtyard impervious or pervious?
We're counting that as impervious, because even if we were to do, blocks, which I think we would want to, have, like, put pavers or something, you're still going to, it doesn't take much for that to still become a impervious surface. Over time, sand gets into the cracks and it becomes impervious.
Well,
You agree with that, Rob, or?
I don't know, my understanding is that there are ways for these to remain pervious, kind of grass block, kind of things that continue to absorb water.
Grass block
I don't
for
accept-
occasional parking, I think works.
But
Grass
that's what we're
block-
talking about here, we're not talking about a commercial parking area, we're talking about, the only time cars are gonna be on this thing is when they're going into their garages, and I
Right,
don't.
but I don't think you could do, grass blocks on that. I think you need to have a plowable, surface that
Well-
stands up better. So I think you'd be dealing with, you could do, brick pavers. You could have, there are brick pavers that allow for a little corner open, and things like that, would work.
Right.
But those cast blocks that are like 3 foot by 3 foot, we have not found that works good for.
I feel like I just saw this in, doesn't Irvington, you know the beautiful church that's just north of where,
Yeah,
isn't there a zone in there
yes.
that is, and I just drove by that the other day,
I think they just rebuilt it.
I don't know, is that right? Is that why it looks nice and green?
Yeah, the one they had before was similar, but it deteriorated. So, I mean, it's,
Okay.
that's not a reason not to do it. If you're doing something like that for occasional parking,
Yeah.
you say every 10, 15 years, we're gonna have to reset it. I mean, my pavers in my driveway, I put those in 20 years ago. I'm gonna need to get somebody in someday soon to kind of level them back out. I've got dips and things. That's the nature of it. It's also sometimes the charm of it, so
Mhm.
I'm not trying to say that that's a negative.
Right, I understand.
well, have you gotten some sense of direction here? I mean, we've,
No.
I've got a sense of direction, but I'd also like the
I-
applicant to get a chance to speak, because he's got a stronger position on this, which I think he's entitled to, and I think
Yeah.
it's better for him to express it than me.
Lang, one of the owners of the property. One of the main reasons we bought the property was to try and develop it like the 3 townhouses side by side, to keep the open yard in the backyard, as well as be able to afford for parking off the street. There's only one side parking on that street. So with the 3 townhouses side by side, I feel we accomplished that. With the alternative plan, with the courtyard, there's a lot more impervious surface space. There's very minimal yard space, and there's no guest parking on site. Also, the cost of building is almost double.
Yeah.
Twice the amount of foundation, twice the amount of exterior surfaces, twice the amount of windows, and twice the amount of garage doors. So with that being said, obviously we bought it as an investment, and we would like to pursue the 3 townhouses side by side.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when I sat down this evening, there was a letter dated this evening addressed to Mr. Lang from Compass, Cindy Waxman and Ellen Schwartz. Do you have that? I just wanted to be sure that you entered it into the record because it is apparently in support of this application.
Okay. It's a letter dated August 8th to Mr. Michael Lang. It's from Compass, which is a, I guess, local or national real estate company. So,
Right, so my background is I'm a certified real estate appraiser as well as a licensed sales agent. I'm not with Compass, but I reached out to Compass, which is probably the largest brokerage in the area now, just to get their feeling. I sent them both alternatives, and they wrote a response basically saying that the market acceptance would be more for the 3 side by side than the courtyard, because you lose pretty much all the curb appeal of the other 2 units when they're not on the street.
right. Yeah, thank you. Everybody get this?
I
Yes.
think we did,
It
yeah.
was on my desk.
Yeah, okay.
These are for sale?
Yes. For sale townhouse.
Well, if there's no one from the public that wishes to speak on this, I think we don't have a resolution tonight, I don't believe.
There's a,
He's not looking for a resolution.
I think we need to
He's
satisfy
looking-
the engineering.
Yeah,
In
he's
the
looking
past,
for-
we've
he's
had
looking
projects
for-
No, I know, but
Yeah.
I think we've moved along so that we know where we are on this.
I think they need a sense from the board as to
Yeah.
What scheme?
which of the 2 options,
Right.
and then they can bring the whole plan back
Okay.
for our next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I guess we should review the board, with the board, their preference. I prefer the townhouse option.
I don't have a strong preference.
Courtyard.
I'm thinking that there are pluses and minuses of both. And to me, a big thing is if there's no one here from the public to object to the townhouse, I think it's fine.
I agree with the townhouse.
I just hope he hadn't changed his mind.
No, I mean, looking in the, like I said, at the last meeting, I thought the courtyard
Yeah.
was a lot more appropriate, but now that I see this layout and understand, the actual way it looks, I feel that this is probably a better option.
I think a helpful view for me was the street view, basically looking up the street, and
Yeah.
it's not as evident, the bulk is not as evident in those views as it is in your profile there.
Just an aside, I don't get to vote, but I think for sale purposes, the courtyard, sale of those back 2 portions is problematic, I would think. You could, if it was gonna be sold as a 3-family property and there were 2 rental units or something, that would work. But as a sale item, the purchasers of those interior properties, 2 interior buildings, that seemed very difficult to achieve.
I don't know, I feel like, to me, the streetscape comparison to me clinches it for me in favor of the courthouse. I feel like the townhouse is the courtyard. The townhouse is an alien form on that street, and 3 curb cuts to 3 garages, as opposed to something that looks like the rest of the street, to me is, and I'm assuming, that I'm not saying it might not be more profitable to do the other scheme, but you know, we're sort of trading off profitability for the owner with sort of issues related to context. For me, the courtyard scheme is clearly more contextual in terms of the street and the rest of the streetscape. That's not the way other, you know, that's not the sense of the board.
That where I could imagine there being just, you know, people may be able to get a place to live on that street because it's 3 families and everything else is like 1 or something. I would think that would work because they'd be looking for something that is different and more private perhaps. I think the character of the street is going to be more wanting to be able to go down the street, go to my house, know where my front door is and walk in. I think it's good, I think there's a kind of more traditional sense. I also am
In the end of the day, it's 3 garage doors side by side.
3 garage doors separated
That's
from
what
each
it
other,
is.
stepping down, sunk back in under the house. The illumination for them all recessed up in, no lights, you know, shining out.
No.
And I am hoping that we are getting a better code in terms of light that can go off the site, so we don't have more garages all of a sudden become a problem. I also think that, as I said, the street is in play, and there are other people on the street who are talking about doing things. And
Yeah.
the only way I can imagine that is filling in the missing teeth.
Right, but maybe not with garage doors.
But Rob, I also think there's a counter-argument that the people most impacted by this are gonna be the neighbors. And they're gonna have, with the larger structure in the backyard, if they're sitting in their backyard, now they've got windows looking down right into their backyard, and I think that's intrusive also.
The adjacent property, as Patty pointed out very honestly, is already deep, already has a deep structure to one side.
But still 26 feet shallower than what we're proposing.
It'd be a better
Case
plan
closed.
if it was 2 units.
You've said
That I
things
don't
like
agree
that
with.
before, Steve.
I don't agree with, I don't agree with making it smaller.
And we need places for people to live.
Yeah, no, I'm in the minority.
Okay.
I think,
I think we have enough understanding, I think we can deal with the engineering, and hopefully we'll be in a position that you've got everything we need to make a decision at the next month.
Yep.
good.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Of course, you
Hello.
need a village attorney.
Hi Patty, how are you?
Pretty good.
You're saying these are going to be owned properties, 3 separately owned properties. Are you going to be subdividing, or are you going to be creating a homeowners association
We'd be
in some
doing it-
form?
We'd be doing condominium, so that we don't have to subdivide the property.
Thank you.
Could be just an HOA and not a condominium.
Beyond my pay grade.
So, do you think we're ready to close the public hearing, or do you want to hold it open to the?
No, we should.
Well, we might as well close it. There doesn't seem to be overwhelming interest by, so I move that we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? No, it's good. Okay. We'll continue this at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, item number 4, is 23 Manor Place, continuation of pre-submission conference for site plan review for proposed new driveway.
We don't have jury calls, right? 23 Manor?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Jacob Mayer, I'm an attorney with Spaldino Smith, Russell Jacobs. I'm here for the applicant, Pisa Financial. John Pisa had some surgery last night. He's in the hospital today. He apologizes, he couldn't make it. He contacted me this afternoon. I'm somewhat familiar with the site and what's going on, so I'd like to be as helpful as I could be. Here as well.
Well, we hope that nothing's going on, actually.
Well, that's I'm sort of trying to catch up as quickly as I can. I'm somewhat understanding, I texted with John today, and I've met with him previously. I've been on the site, I've walked it, so I've seen some of the areas with it, so I don't know if there's any questions or issues. I understand he's made a request for a driveway paving application. There's been some issues historically with the shared driveway, so it's something that I can clarify, I'd be happy to do so.
Is there a map, or do we have anything on that?
It has a long history.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah, yeah, no,
familiar
it's,
with it, that's why.
So
Yeah,
what,
yeah, no,
what
it's-
he's shown is the driveway on his property, then it has to continue along a DMAP paper road, one that's been approved by the neighbor. He went to court to win the right to use that DMAP road also. But what myself and the village engineer have asked him to show on his site plan is also the continuation across the DMAPPed road out to Temple Avenue, just so we know that it's doable, how he's gonna turn into it, and I don't think we've seen that yet.
Right, there's no revised site plan that we've seen, right?
I don't believe we've seen one yet, no.
So I'm not quite sure what we,
This is the paper street?
Thomas from
It
Hudson
doesn't-
again. Again, we were recently retained by the applicant.
Yes.
We are intending on preparing a site plan. The timing didn't work out, we weren't quick enough to get one in. But we just wanted to
Yeah.
touch base with you and more or less update you that we are he is planning on moving forward and we'll have to develop a site plan for the near future.
Is the site plan for the driveway on the owner's property? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm sorry?
The site plan you're in question is for the driveway on the owner's property?
Yes.
Yeah.
From the DMAP roadway.
Could we just call it an unimproved street? Because it hasn't officially
Sure, on
been
the
DMAPPed yet.
unimproved street.
I just want to make
No, it
sure
has
it's
been.
clear for the record.
No, it has
They did demap them.
It has
They
been.
did demap them, they just didn't assign that
They
to
haven't
anybody.
completed the projects yet. That hasn't been completed yet, so we're still looking into the historical documentation, so we can just call it an unimproved paper street.
Also where the driveway is, there is an existing gravel driveway that was on the previous survey.
I think many of us on the board have visited the property previously in connection with another application. Wait a minute, wait, no,
They can't hear you, say it,
can't
speak
hear you.
louder.
no.
Here.
Apologize.
The board is familiar with the property from a previous application, so we understand where the driveway on the property is and then the DMAP street.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is the driveway on the current, on property,
Yes.
nothing about the DMAP street.
Well, it would come together as one site,
Well,
but
yeah. But, which doesn't mean use, it means it could come together.
So can somebody summarize where we are legally with this?
So I believe this gentleman just said that he's going to redo the site plan, correct? And show the whole course?
yes.
Yeah,
So I think we're gonna be waiting for that, so
yeah,
we continue it till we have that new information?
yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay.
So how does it, I have a question, how does it work with the unmapped street? Is that something that they need a variance for, or is that something?
Well, what's happened is the neighbor on Temple has already improved that portion and is using it for his access. So Mr. Pisa went to a higher court to win the right to use it as well across the portion that that neighbor has improved. So we've got that document from the court. So they've told him he has the right to go across it as well as the neighbor. But we want to see, engineering-wise, how his driveway is going to connect into that.
I see. So the court overruled or decided that even though he doesn't own the property, he has the right to use it.
because of the
Access to
precedent
the-
that someone else was already using.
What happened, as I understand in the litigation, is that the neighbor was obstructing the use. And so he's sued the neighbor to relieve the obstruction. There was a settlement agreement that was entered into the court for joint use and, shared maintenance of that driveway. Just so for clarification purposes, on your agenda, it says that this is for the site plan review for a proposed new driveway. I think it's more appropriate to not call it a new driveway. So there's an existing driveway that we're just paving over.
An improved driveway.
Improving, exactly.
Okay.
Does the
Does the current driveway go out to
unimproved
Manor
street
Temple?
have a name? Did it ever get a name?
No,
No,
not that I know.
And it's just the section that goes parallel to,
It's, right now, it's
to.
unimproved except
Manor.
for the one driveway off of Temple, and the rest is all wooded area. That,
Right.
on the map, runs through the Highland and
But-
Manor.
I mean, I noticed.
What's the lower street? Well, Temple's to the side.
So, but it just, but the
backyards
unimproved,
of-
the unimproved street runs parallel to Manor.
Yes,
Yeah, and then the driveway goes to that street. Yeah, okay,
correct,
gotcha.
It's not to the driveway, it's
to Temple.
It runs parallel to Manor, but it runs
But-
horizontal.
Hi-
to Temple.
The existing garage,
Mhm.
is, the house, Pisa's house faces Manor, but the existing garage is in the backyard.
At that lower
Yes,
level.
yes. I remember.
There's very little evidence of the existing driveway. It probably was overgrown years and years ago.
Yes, no,
And
I
there's
remember.
trees in there and everything, but they had to have been using that alleyway to access it at some point in history.
Well, it is clear, there is a path, there aren't trees that are blocking it, so in theory, if you pave the driveway, you can come off Temple across the, what we're calling G-map, turn and go into the garage.
Right,
Yes, yeah, I understand. The garage is sort of underneath the house.
yes, underneath the house in the backyard.
Yep,
Except he doesn't own that piece of the unimproved.
He does. The unimproved,
He owns his yard. He doesn't own the alley.
I'm sorry?
the unimproved portion that he's paving over or seeking to pave over, that's his land,
That's his land, but from the end of the driveway that was done by the neighbor on the DMAP street to where this driveway we're talking about is not his property.
That's correct.
Yeah, this will be more evident when we get the full site plan.
right.
Right, we need a
Right.
updated one.
So he has no, at this point, has no legal way to get from the improved portion to his driveway.
Well, except to the extent that, there's the shared driveway agreement and there's litigation that was settled in the Supreme Court. He can drive over the, what we're calling demapped, but then he would have, when he turns into his property, that is the undeveloped portion.
Well,
In the same way that the neighbor's been utilizing that improved, right, he can use it.
well, I think that's a question to be determined. So,
is the next step to get the engineering work done?
Got a site plan for the next site.
Site plan first.
Updated site plan,
yeah,
That's our intention, to get you a site plan.
updated site plan.
Yep.
Yep,
okay, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna
Next item on our agenda, item number 5, 41 Cedar Street.
Take a motion to
Excuse me,
continue.
continue?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, motion to continue to a date certain, and then you won't have to renotice
Well,
the hearing
Okay,
on this application.
yeah, I mean, it's not a public,
Yeah, this is just pre-submission.
this is pre-submission,
Thank you,
so.
my
we
bad.
just would continue pre-submission. Item number 5, 41 Cedar Street, continuation of public hearing for site plan approval for proposed new mixed-use building with residential units, et cetera. I believe they're outside. But we could go on.
Yeah.
this one?
Mhm.
Okay.
Because I can punch you too.
Yep.
We have lots of drugs.
While you're getting ready, I want to acknowledge two pieces of correspondence we received with respect to this application. One is a letter from Norma Drummond, Commissioner of the Westchester County Planning Board. This application was referred to the Westchester County Planning Board, and they have reviewed it and come back with comments. And I'd like to give a copy of that to the applicant for his records. Secondly, we received a letter from Zion Episcopal Church, written by Niall Kane, giving their comments with respect to the impact that they believe this would have on their church.
There was also previous correspondence from someone, a Ms. Person, right, about the view down Cedar Street to the church that I received.
Right, I don't remember.
Earlier.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a public hearing, and while we're waiting, I would move that we open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Good.
Good evening, my name is Cosmo Marfione. I am one of the owners of 4345 Cedar Street and the president of the BDC Group. Tonight is our third time presenting to the board. We've been here June, July, and now August. And we're going to run you through this presentation as efficiently as possible. I want to talk about a little bit about the overall project and a recap of what has happened in the last 18 months. And then Diane Case from Case Architecture and Engineering, our historical preservation guru, will discuss some of her findings. Christina Griffin will talk about the project and the architectural features. Michael Stein and Tom will speak about the site plan. And Carlita Holt is not here tonight, but Brian Dempsey is his partner, which will talk about traffic and parking. And David will conclude it with the economic summary. So let's talk about 18 months ago, we went to the Village Board of Trustees. We presented a four-story building with 18 one- and two-bedroom units, several thousand square feet of retail, and code compliant at that time, before the zoning changed. Zoning changed, we had to redesign the project, and we decided that there was an opportunity to acquire some of the property to the west of us, which was the Presbyterian Church. They had a need to replace their antiquated sanitary and storm line, and we were able to come up with a deal for us to replace their services and purchase the property next door. We're in contract with a contract vendor. Our second meeting, we redesigned the project. The second meeting to the Village Board of Trustees was in May, where we presented, it's supposed to be 15 two-bedroom condominium units, reduced density. We reduced it from 18 to 15, reduced 4 stories to 3 stories. several thousand square feet of retail, code compliant with the zoning. And then the village board of trustees voted to refer us to the board today. In June, we presented what we call our Scheme A. Again, it's a 3-story building, 15 two-bedroom condominiums, and parking at the cellar level, and retail, 2,000 square feet of retail on the facing Cedar Street. From that meeting, there were some comments from the board, which we tried to address on our second meeting. And between the first and the second meeting, we decided that let's look at some different schemes. So last month, we presented 3 different schemes. We presented a Scheme A, 3-story, the original scheme with 1 cellar on the ground. Scheme B, which was a 4-story, no cellar on the ground. We just had parking at the rear. We took those units and we placed them on the 4th floor, set back around 30 to 40 feet on the north and the west side. And Scheme C, we took a look at a 1-story and pushing, 1 story in the front and pushing it getting a tower at the rear, which we have to go 5 stories in order to get the same density and to make it economically viable. From that meeting to this meeting, we also took some of the comments from the public, and we decided as a team that we're going to pursue Scheme A as it's a fully zoning compliant scheme. At this meeting, we'll also address the concerns and the feedback from the board and the public, and we're going to request that we're going to request for you to close the public hearing and endorse the project and make a recommendation to the board of trustees. This just goes through some of the impacts and effects between Scheme A, B, and C that we will discuss throughout the meeting. David will talk about some of the economic effects of the project and so on and so forth. So we'll go through all that. Again, tonight we will be addressing some of the feedback from the public hearing and from the board. From between last meeting and this meeting, we have done more 3D modeling. We've developed better plans, also different perspectives, including the Zion Church, which Christina will present. We looked at logistics, and sequencing, and we've enlisted an historic preservation architect who gave us some feedback on the historical value of our building. So now I'll give it to Diane, who will talk about her findings from our site visit at the building.
My name is Diane Case, and I had the opportunity to walk through the site up here and to take a look at things and to give Cosmo what I call an unvarnished opinion on what he was trying to convince me was a building that really didn't need to stand up anymore. I have no problem telling Cosmo and the team that they should keep something if they should keep something. So it was an interesting site visit, and it's a very interesting village, and it's very fascinating, this one little street, because everything is so different from other streets. And when you read the plan, you can very carefully see that you have lots of different areas and they have totally different characters. The character of this one block on Cedar Street is really quite commercial, and it's developed over time. I think, let's do this. I think you've all seen this from one version or another, where you're coming up from the river and you're coming across a thoroughfare that probably was a walking thoroughfare. No one ever climbed straight up a hill, they always climb around a hill. residential to a commercial street. You can see you've got right here. You've got the residential buildings here and here and here, but you've got the commercial spaces that have been built in front. These are all earlier structures, and then the commercial street, the commercial face has been a later infill along that street there. So again, you've got a progression that has gone on over time here. And that progression actually gives you two very different characters. The other side of the street is almost all first floor commercial, and then it is residential up above in some cases. So if you look at this one here, you can very clearly see where you've got the residential in the back, and you've got the commercial in the front. This is your theater, so that probably had the same type of thing where it got changed. You then have the residential with commercial, the residential with commercial, and then your large residential anchoring the corner up here, and the fairly low-rise commercial along this side of the street. So it's a very interesting little street, and it's a really playful little street because it's very inconsistent. It's very varied, and that's great. That's wonderful. That's what you want. That what gives it a lot of character. The building itself, you can see that the commercial building didn't really pay much attention to the residential building behind it. They're two totally different structures in that regard. And what you have here is you have 1, 2, 3, 4 bays plus the center bay here, which is the entrance, was probably the entrance to the residential units in the back. Problem with these wonderful little structures is that they're very simply built. The commercial buildings are very simply built. And in the 20s, they didn't know a lot about flashing. They didn't know a lot about keeping water out of buildings. And as a result, what you have here is you have this very simple pier structure here in between the bays. And then you have something that spans across that to the next pier over here. Well, what happens if you look at this building here, you've got really thick lines that go across here. You have step cracks that go here, up and around the arch, and again, step cracks here. You've got really wide joints that are along here. There's a really good example of that really wide joint that I'm talking about. And if you put on your x-ray vision, what you probably have there is you probably have an I-beam that spans that opening from pier to pier. And you've got rust on the top of the I-beam, and you've got rust sitting on the bottom of the I-beam. Rule of thumb, 1 inch of steel, if you left it outside in your backyard, would give you roughly 10 inches of rust. So what happens is that over time, that rust will build up, and it'll actually push that whole parapet up. And if you look closely at this building, this whole parapet is lifted, and this section here, you can especially see it, but it's laid back going onto the roof. It's probably out of plumb a couple of inches. So when I'm looking at this going, okay, this is my conditions, how do I fix it? I know that I have to get to this steel in here, which means I'm going to have to somehow support the parapet that's above, and/or I take that parapet off and then try to rebuild it. So that's kind of the top half that we're looking at. The other elements that we have here that are consistent is that you have a curve that comes the whole way across, with the exception of this last bay, or this bay over here, to the right of the residential door. And you also have these little knee walls, again, with the exception of this one bay here. You don't have original frames in the windows, you don't have original doors, and this bay over here has been changed. You can see here where they've taken the center door and they've moved it over to the side. So you don't have the knee wall and you don't have the center bay. So that's the one that's been most dramatically changed. So when I go back and look at what is left from a original standpoint in the commercial structure, I pretty much have these piers on all of the bays, and I have most of the pull most of this down to fix and deal with those problems that span across the top. If you look at the residential structure from behind, it has been totally coated with stucco. It appears to be a wood frame structure. And again, I'm looking at it going, it's a major restoration. I'm gonna have to deal with that there. I've got access issues, I've got all kinds of other things from an architectural standpoint. So when I add everything up, I have to look at it and say, is it really worthwhile? What are we actually saving here? And it opens up my thought process to say, maybe there's something that we could put here that would be better from a use standpoint, maybe there's something that would be better from a community standpoint, maybe something that would help this community grow in a different direction. Maybe this building both of these buildings have served their useful life. Now, from a preservation standpoint, that's a really hard thing to get to. So the fact that I actually got to it is frustrating and interesting both on my part. It's something that I don't get to very often. But again, I think you can see here where you've got the very wide joints and the joints coming across here. So it's very definitely got issues that make me want to say, hey, what else could we possibly put in here that would work? So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Christine Griffin, installed CPA studio. And I'm here to show you our current wrap the retail and storefront around the corner and have a little seating area, a little park there. In back of the retail, we will have 3 units on this level and about 500 square foot space will be, there'll be something like a gym for the residents. Second and third plans are very similar. Each plan has 6 units, and we have an affordable unit that will be almost 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, just like and all the other units are also 2 bedrooms. They range from 1,400 to 1,600 square feet. We have some outdoor space with balconies on the west and the south side of buildings. And another item we've introduced in response to discussion at the last meeting is on the 3rd floor plan. I wish I had a pointer. We have a setback part of the building so that we can create a, right here, we've jogged the building, but we did this because we wanted to create a 2-story facade here and set this back, this 3rd floor back, so that we could have a transitional building between the 3-story and the 1-story building, the existing, 1-story building to the east of the site. And then on the roof, we will have about 3,000 square feet common roof deck. We have bulkhead that's for elevator stair, and then 5 private roof decks, and a green roof on the southern side, which will help with our storm management, reduce the heat island effect of the building. These are our sustainable features. I happen to be a lead AP and also a Castle House, Castle House designer. We have sustainable features in all of our projects. So at this point, we're exploring ideas that will follow that we see in the lead rating manual, such as use of low VOC materials, finishes, use of locally harvested and recycled content materials. We're going to do waste management during demolition to minimize waste materials in the landfill. We're going to see if we can salvage and recycle the materials removed from the building during demolition. We're going to recycle and have recycling composting centers by business owners and residents. We will have a green roof to manage stormwater runoff and reduce heat island effect, rainwater collection reuse system, energy efficiency using principles, Council House standard, and bicycle racks. I also co-wrote the green code for Hastings, and I had it based on the manuals that we've used on our lead projects. So I'm familiar with these features that we like to see in the building. This is the latest elevation of the wall that will be facing north along Cedar Street. What we've done is we have treated the storefronts so that there are individual doors and display windows, so that you could have multiple retail businesses or just 1 or 2 that have multiple display windows, also multiple doors, so there can be easy access to sidewalk activities such as tables and chairs and displays. We have a transom glass above the storefront, which is very common in the downtown architecture you see from 1880 to 1930. And then we have a lower cornice span here, and then we have an upper cornice. We've broken the building actually into 3 parts. On this facade facing Cedar, we have this building here to the left, which is going to be a different color and different treatment. We have the 3rd floor pulled back so that this reads as a 2-story facade with a cornice here, but this cornice will be made out of brick. This cornice will be made out of trim work. We're trying to show variations on a theme, very common in our downtown. And at the very top, this is just a railing up at the roof decks. We have a retail level, we have a residential level, and now everything is capped with some kind bulkhead, which is about 5% of the roof right now and has the stair and elevator in it. This is our corner element, which has a glass roof at the top of the piece there. And you see the next slide on the side elevation. So this retail area turns the corner. Since we have the bend in the road, and we took advantage of the idea that we could see this corner element, we have more storefront glass and retail space. And then once you leave the pocket park going back here, this becomes residential. And these are some of the balconies that we have on the side. This is our section. We are having, this is a 3-story building. We have a ramp coming down to the garage. All the parking for the residents parked underneath. Retail is in the front. Amenity space is tucked in there, all the lobby space, and there's 2 residential units that face the back of the building that has small patios. This is our streetscape, our current design. What we have done since we last met, we have gotten more accurate information on the building next to us. We have a surveyor provided the elevations or heights of the theater building. This is the theater building at 39 Cedar, and to the right is 43, 45 Cedar. So this is existing, and this is proposed. Down here is, this is the building that has the 1-story piece existing with the 3-story house in the back. And this is proposed. This is our new building next to the theater building. Actually, and you can see you go from 5 stories, 3 stories, 1 story, 1 story, 1. The theater building is 41 feet tall, and the top of our roof is 40 feet tall above the sidewalk. This is a blow-up of the streetscape, just showing the existing conditions where we have the theater building, top of that theater building, with the sign tower. This is the old house behind the storefront. And again, just a blow-up to show you how our new building is sitting next to the theater building. This is a rendering that shows, has the building placed in a photograph of the street. You see how it fits on the street. This is showing 3-story park. This is the 3 sections of the building is this piece, which is going to be a different color brick. And then we have residential to the right and to the left. I'm going to show you a blow-up of that so you can see how that works. We did this because we wanted to break up the scale of the building. I've learned from working in downtowns that once you go over 5 or 6 bays, the building can get unwieldy. So we broke the building so that wherever the storefront and the retail was would be one building, and then we have another look for the piece of the building that's just for it's just residential, which is where the garage entry and the front entrance for the lobby is, and then for the residential units that are in the back. This is a blow up of the building. This is showing our forming element. Since our last planning board meeting, we have looked really hard at the details of the storefront. We know this is where all the activity is, and this is where we can really make a difference in creating a vibrant streetscape, which is something that is very much very clearly a desirable goal in the vision plan, that we provide this opportunity to have big storefront glass, like the old buildings in the downtown, so the pedestrian can see into the windows. We have multiple doors so that people can come in and out and flow out also have now topographic studies. We were provided, we have a survey of the Zion Church property, and we're able to link that topographic information to our site, and took a look at how that works. This is this little pocket park that we've created, and just to the right, there's a pillar and the driveway going up to Zion Church. This is the view looking towards Cedar Commons from, right next to the church property, showing how the church is up on the hill there. And this is a view, actually, like an airplane view of just showing the massing of the proposed building next to the theater building with the church beyond. And this is another view that shows relationship of the two buildings. You can see the church is up on the hill, and the topography climbs up, and there's a pretty big space between that building and the Cedar Commons project. Actually, I'd like to bring Diane back. I think she has some comments that she'd like to share with you about the design of the building, how it fits with downtown.
I think one of the things that I talked about was that this was a very lively street and had a lot of variety, and I think what is being proposed really plays into that. You don't have, well, it does a couple of things. One, with the different massing, with the two different techniques of separating the residential out visually with different materials and setting it back and setting it to the side, I think that helps break things up a little bit. I think some of the pulling in some of the historic elements in the spandrels and also in the cornice helps tie this back into the rest of the streetscape. And you also have in your planning documents, you have a very strong desire to use historic elements again. One could go a different direction, but it's not what you have chosen in your planning documents, which would be to take a more modern approach to this. This is a much more conservative approach, and it's what you've got. So I think that works really well. The other thing I really like is that with the two-story buildings across the street, I think this plays into those two-story buildings. And I think it works really well from that end. From the streetscape and having, again, those large windows with the piers coming across, it starts to keep that rhythm of the street going, and it keeps moving you along the street from a visual standpoint. All things that I think you want. The other thing that it actually does that the current building does not do is it provides another end to that street. You have the large building at the large residential apartment building at the east end of it. This starts to give the west end a bit of an anchor. And I think that's something that's very important here. And I don't think that this detracts whatsoever from the church and the stature of the church. I think they're two very independent things, and I think that they say different things, and I think they actually are quite compatible.
Thank you.
Now, I submitted a report to show how we conform with the Salisbury Vision Plan and the Salisbury downtown buildings design guidelines. What I submitted was a response point by point. I just pulled out the see mentioned in your vision plan. Next item I pulled out was, architectural detailing to promote design consistent with historic eclectic style of the downtown, complementary to the historic buildings in the downtown. Any flat roofs, framed cornices, decorative parapets. We have done a photo documentation of historic and present day buildings of Dallas area downtown, and looked at other comparable downtown settings, and we have provided, based on all of our research and ideas, provided the following features, which we feel complements the historical and traditional downtown buildings. One is that the building design has a storefront base, residential facade at the middle, decorative parapet at the top. We have distinctive and varied roof lines, such as the tiered decorative brick and the cornice detail. We have traditional storefront treatment, sign dams, multiple door openings, windows of second and third floor facade with a residential scale, multiple pane casements. We have use of different types and patterns of brick as exterior materials, use of stone details at sills and headers, and we have streetscape amenities like that. What we're encouraging by the design that we've created, and they include seating areas, tables, and umbrellas on these ledgers. Another guideline that in the design guidelines, one guideline was along, well, it mentioned the gateway, but I think this is for other larger scale buildings where the widths exceed 25 feet, that we create architectural masking detail that give the appearance of multiple storefronts, which is something we've gone to a lot of careful study to provide by breaking the building into those three sections we described and having different heights and color and detail. We've also this is another guideline to provide functional display windows that will be at least 70% of the building width. Our storefronts are 80% of the building. Another guideline is the varied roof lines and surface materials, which I think we already mentioned. And one more is scale massing, facades and materials that will be viewed from the vehicular pedestrian pathways that will contribute positively to the streetscape. And these are the items that we feel does that. We're continuing the downtown connect architecture that has retail storefront, street level, residential above. We have a lively storefront level, multiple display windows for view by pedestrians. We have different types of sign bands, corner feature, transom windows, outdoor amenities, and in addition to these aesthetic features, the positive impacts that this building provides is code-compliant building with current fire suppression sprinkler system and safety features. We have fully ADA compliant building that will allow access for handicapped and elderly people. We will have two two-bedroom affordable housing units. The new housing in the downtown will be walking distance to the train and local shops, which is responsive to the plan goals and the vision plan. We have integrated the storefront design so that we can have more harmonious display of signage, and we have generally improved the quality of the downtown with this distinctive building, nice storefront design, streetscape. Plus the housing that we've designed will have sustainable energy efficient features, as we discussed. Following principles of the LEED rating system and the Passive House standard. These are I just wanted to show you again some of the images that have inspired us. In particular, Beekman was quite inspiring, and this is such an interesting variety of storefronts. Most of them have transom windows, lots of different these are the historical images that we found at the Historical Society of Dobbs Ferry. We have an image looking down Cedar Street. This image to the right actually is not our site. It's actually, next door, shows an old house behind and one-story long facade with, I think there are 4 or 5, 7 bays here. We could not find a photograph of our site the way it was built originally. But, they're still very inspiring because you see the transom windows and the brick detail, all the different cornices on the buildings on Main. Some are 2-story buildings, some are 3. And then 75 Main, with a big storefront glass and transom windows. So I just wanted to let you know, this has been we have looked at the buildings that give Hastings its character, its sense of place, its community. So we really took all these into account when we designed the building. And now I want to turn this over to, I think
Let's go back to the.
Hudson Engineering, discuss the engineering aspects.
Hi again, I'm Thomas with Hudson. Just gonna briefly go through the engineering site plan. Here we have our demolition plan. For our stormwater, all the runoff from the building will be pushed to the rear of the building and connect into a attenuation gallery to reduce the flows for up to a 25-year storm. It'll then be piped down to the existing infrastructure in Cedar Street. The site utilities will come out adjacent to the driveway and connect within Cedar Street as well. We're working on updating some of the information in the right-of-way. Once we have that, our plans will be updated accordingly. Really, I think that's the bulk of our information. So I'm gonna pass this right along to the traffic engineer.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Brian Dempsey, and I'm a partner at the firm Provident Design Engineering. I'm filling in for Carlito Holt. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York, as well as 5 other states. I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer, as well as I'm a member of the Westchester County Traffic Safety Board. Since the last hearing, Carlito did submit a letter in regards to one of the comments about this, whether the building from the project would impact the site distance coming out of the church. As he explained in the letter, based upon the curve in the road and the on-street parking, a vehicle exiting the church will be basically in front of this building here, the building of the project. So the project would have no impact on the site distance for a vehicle coming out of the church parking area. In terms of, we did see the county review letter. The only traffic comment in the county letter was the discussion about possible bike racks in front of the site. There is a bike storage area for the residents within the garage. We can put in a bike rack in front. That would be up to the village. If they're in favor of it, our one issue is whether it would block pedestrians and such, and where the location would be. In terms of, we've also reviewed the Han letter. There were 2 traffic comments in that. The first one was site distance. We meet, as been stated previously before, we meet the stopping site distance, which is the required site distance, and that's for vehicles along Cedar Street to see somebody coming in and out or out of the garage. As typical in a downtown area where you first parking space is gonna be shifted back 10 feet, so that will provide additional sight distance for the vehicle to come out of the garage, look to the left, and to make a right or left and turn there. The other question that came up was about the driveway width that was mentioned earlier. But the driveway width is gonna be 17 feet wide, which is tight, but it's appropriate and it's acceptable. Think of it as if you have two parking spaces, your average parking space is 8.5 feet wide, and you have two of them next to them. So there is room for two cars to go past. There will not be trucks going in and out of this garage, and it will just be passenger vehicles. And the people using the garage will be the residents and possibly some of the employees or so from the retail facilities. So it'll be a limited amount. Now, on this chart, we show that there's 41, we'll use the peak PM hour as an example, so that's say 5 to 6 o'clock. And on a weeknight, we're showing 41 total trips in that hour compared to 38 trips based upon the current use. But of that 41, 30 of them are for the retail use, 14 coming in, 16 coming out. And so from the residential portion, we only have 7 cars coming in, 4 cars coming out. So that would be very rare that 2 cars would actually interact on the driveway. The driveway itself is about 3 to 4 car lengths long. So if you're at the bottom coming up, you could see someone coming down the driveway, so you can wait and let them come through if need be, and then you can go out. So there is sufficient driveway width. In terms of parking bid, this chart was a little different than my part. What it is we are providing a benefit in terms of the on-street parking. Right now, there is no off-street parking for the facility, so you have the employees and such, and the patrons have to park on the street, plus you have 3 residential units there now. There is no off-street parking for them. So that's some parking you are now saving from the on-street. In addition, we will have sufficient parking for all the residents to park inside the garage. So in terms of on-street demand parking, we're actually reducing that by about 11 vehicles during each of the hours. And so that we feel that's a significant advantage of this project by providing the garage and for the residents and for, say, some employees. And as I said, the current residents now have no off-street parking to use. Just summarizing the traffic and parking, basically, Carlito had gone through most of this previous hearing. The level of service coming in and out of the garage would be an A, level service A or B. The vehicle will have to inch out depending upon the size of the vehicle that's parked to its right, so that they can see around it. But it will be good levels of service. As again, there's 5 to 7 vehicles coming out during the peak hour. It's not a significant amount of traffic coming out of there. We do have the stopping sight distance to meet the federal requirements, so that there is sufficient sight distance. We talked about the 17-foot driveway. And then we were saying that we do have a positive impact as we're reducing some of the impacts to the on-street parking because of what we explained, plus we will have 500 square feet of less retail space there, which will also reduce the number of on-street parking demand slightly also.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, David Smith. I think they saved the best for last. We're almost done. Thank you for your patience and forbearance. I thought it was important to give you a very comprehensive presentation of the process townhouse lofts as the most recent for sale product that's comparable to what PDC is proposing for the village. And so we ran some assessment numbers for the proposed project, and we're estimating that the projected revenue, all told, is approximately $486,000, again, for all three of the taxing jurisdictions, the village, the school district, and town county. And so that's a delta of approximately $444,000. And I'll break it down. The village sees a projected increase of approximately $95,000, the school district $300,000, and the town and county approximately $50,000 in net increase in tax revenue. And then just to quickly finish up on the presentation, this is at least a $5 million investment by BDC. There's the creation of approximately 50 construction jobs as a result of the new project. We're estimating approximately 5 full-time jobs. And injection, I think this is an important component because it gets back to some of the goals and policies in your vision plan about creating a vibrant downtown. And the new households are projected to increase or spend approximately $1.3 million in discretionary income in the greater Dobbsbury community. Now, not necessarily all in Dobbsbury, but these residents, these households, they're going to need to get goods and services that are within walking distance. And we certainly think that there'll be a good proportion of that that's spent right within the Dobbsbury community. So we think that's a positive aspect to end the presentation with and turn it back over to your board. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Any board member wish to have a comment at this time?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Your traffic engineer just touched on this, but is it correct that the net loss of retail space will be about 500 square feet?
Yeah, loss.
Yes, current retail's approximately 2,500, we're down to about a little less than like 1,900 and change.
Okay, and it also sounds like you've been in touch with South Presbyterian Church about some purchase of land. Are they fully on board with this? Are there any view impacts? Is there any negative impact on their property?
I don't think there are any negative impacts. In fact, I think one of the issues was that they were having some issues with drainage, and we can positively solve that issue for them by creating this easement and allowing and improving the utilities through that easement.
There was also not only drainage, but the director there was snaking the sanitary sewer line once a month, and she still is. Because, I don't know, maybe this.
It's an old property.
It's an old property, and so we are, right now, we have executed a letter of intent with them and a contract, right? So we are in, they're fully on board.
Okay, I'll assume if they sign that, they know what they're getting into.
Well, it took, and that's why it took so long from the first board of trustee meeting to the one that we submitted in May. It took us about a year to go through the process with that.
Thank you.
Other questions comments by the, yes, please.
Yeah, I just have a question, and I think we addressed this at one time before, the driveway, will there be any sort of pedestrian warning for people walking on the sidewalk that cars are coming in the driveway?
There's typically those types of conditions that are provided as part of the interface between the pedestrians and the vehicular houses. I think, Christina, you've used some of those as part of your other projects and Brian projects.
Yes, we have put in electronic devices that the driver can see that there's they can pick up on whether pedestrians are coming a certain distance to the driveway, and this can be a little stop light and all sorts of ways where the driver can see whether there's a pedestrian coming close to the driveway before they
I think it's easy to see, and when you put the numbers up, that there are advantages to the village in a project like this. I think, speaking just for myself, but I'm sure others may share it, currently, and for many years, I identified this building with the stores that are there and the restaurants and the coffee, not the tobacco store, but the other stores. And that's what we think of. We don't think of the structure, we don't think of the age of the structure, we think of what our experience is with that structure. So I think getting over that hurdle is a big psychological one I think for me and for many people. But I do understand the advantages, I believe, to the village in this project, and I'm supportive of it.
I'm not supportive of this project. Here's like why I appreciate what Steve just said about, identifying it with the businesses that are there and so on. So and especially in the last year, I have kind of a foot in two camps, right? Because I'm involved there's an interest in historic preservation, a renewed interest in historic preservation in the downtown. And at the same time, I'm sort of aggressively pro-downtown development. I was disappointed, as one of the authors of the original kind of vision plan, that the fourth story, for example, is not as of right. I think that was a mistake. That we changed the parking requirement from one space per dwelling unit to something higher. I think Dobbs Ferry downtown is a long way from built out. I actually want to see a lot of development. And I'm usually in the position of like talking about aggressive kind of redevelopment here. And I feel that way, I feel that way still. And I don't think there's actually a contradiction between trying to preserve old buildings and doing some intensive redevelopment, right? So to me, part of the issue is, I appreciated Diane's presentation, and I'm sure she knows when the building was built. But the entire argument around historic preservation that we just heard was based on the condition of the existing building and the cost of repairing it. And if those were the principal criteria for what we decided we were going to save or not save in Dobbs Ferry, we wouldn't save anything, right? Because they are by definition old buildings. They leak. They were not built properly. They don't meet any of the kind of standards that we have today, right? So the argument that somehow it's not worth saving because it's going to be costly and difficult to repair, to me, is not the argument. In terms of the guidelines for the downtown, I think it's not, I appreciate the kind of detailed memo about all the ways in which this meets the vision plan and the zoning. It's interesting to have it pushed back in my face, having been responsible for it. But I also think it's a little bit, I think when we talk about kind of that the new building should meet architectural character or should be 2 stories at minimum, I think it's pretty clear that if there was an old building, let's say there was a building here that was unambiguously historic. We discovered that it was a 1-story building that was built by Richardson or somebody. We wouldn't be bringing up this argument about the fact that that building should be torn down and a new 2- or 3-story building should be built, because that would be more in compliance with the vision plan, right? So clearly, part of the idea of this, of the architectural consistency with the vision plan, was to, anticipating sites that were going to be kind of built new, right? Not situations like this where we have a building which, whatever kind of condition it is or however old it is an existing old building that has character and so on. We wouldn't be applying the same 2-story minimum I did, or even the detailing I did, to an existing building the way we would for a new one. But the real kind of, the real issue for me, and I was recently met with somebody who's on this historic commissioned with me and said, so like you're like really pro-development, but you're putting all this time into the historic district stuff. Like, are these two things in contradiction? And I feel like, especially at this site, they're not. And here's why. This site is a big site. It's close to, it's roughly 130 feet deep. So if you take out if let's say it was a different property, this one-story building that's in the front, it's roughly 40 feet or something like that deep. That leaves you with a site that's almost 90 feet deep. Now, to put that in like some sense of scale, a New York City block is 200 feet deep, right? And typically cut down the middle. So those sites that have been developed and sponsored all this development in New York City are roughly 100 feet deep, sometimes as narrow as 20 feet. You have a site that even if you take out, even if the one-story building was not in play, you have a site that is between 103 and 114 feet wide and 90 feet deep, close to 90 feet deep in terms of new development. So I don't accept the notion, at least not yet, that there isn't a scheme that preserves all or most of the one-story building and still creates a significant amount of development in the remaining portion of the site, which is extremely large. And I would say for my part, in terms of the business about the four-story alternative, I don't know, I wasn't present for the discussion that you had with the Board of Trustees at the time. I would completely support a four-story scheme if it enabled us to preserve the existing one-story building, all or most of the one-story building that is there. It would preserve the view shed, which I don't think you accurately represented of what you see when you look down Cedar Street and the view of the church. But that, to me, that view shed issue is not really the driver. I guess my point is this site is so large that I actually don't see why it isn't possible to do both things. To preserve all or most of the existing one-story building and to restore it, and to build a significant building, a large building, in the remaining portion of the site that is behind. And that's why I can't support the idea of tearing down this building, which is, as you showed in that old photograph, even though you agree it's not, you couldn't quite find the exact shot that showed this building. It's been around for a long time. I don't know what the build date was. I imagine Diane knows. That's part of the fabric of the downtown, and there's no, I don't see the need to tear it down to build a significant development in the remaining portion of the site.
Other board members wish to comment? This is a public hearing, and if there's anyone that wishes to speak, please.
Leslie Walter, 40 Clinton Avenue. I do appreciate all the work you've done since the last session. The transoms, the different color, the different frontages, the more obvious cut in the corner. Those are beautiful. I want to step back a little bit and address a comment that Ms. Griffin, I believe it goes along with what Rob Lane said, with what Ms. Griffin made, this comment last session. She said that single-story buildings along Cedar were too many and a bit tedious. She also made the point that a sense of space in a downtown area is created by the walls. But when I heard that statement, I took that to mean, in the case of Duxbury, the lack of walls. I cherish the open sky and the open waterscape that every corner in this downtown delivers. So coming from Maine to Cedar, on my right is the open sky above Zion Church and a low streetscape. If a 3-story blunt wall like that, even with all those beautiful windows and transoms, is planted next to all of that open sky, it encroaches touches on the openness that I like so much. Yes, we have open sky above the Hudson. We should not, however, devalue the sense of space that our village possesses right now. So I would just ask that the new building be as unobtrusive, not this blunt wall going up from the sidewalk, self-effacing and respectful of Dobbs' open spaces.
Thank you.
The Reverend Mary Gramsch, I'm the priest in charge at Zion Episcopal Church, 55 Cedar Street. And with one serious exception in this room, my wife Terry Lucas, I actually live at the site we're talking about. I live in the rectory, which is the yellow building on the site. And I too am concerned about the open views. Our junior warden, Niall Kane, I think has expressed that in his letter about the openness. And I want to give a comment about the humanness of buildings that are low, quite frankly, that have a human scale to it. Part of the reason that Dobbs Ferry is going through this lovely boom is that it is very human, it is very walkable, it is very green. And yet, if we're not mindful of those values and insist on putting fairly large buildings, we kind of begin to defeat the whole reason that people come to Dobbs Ferry. I have a concern about the large massing building on the back along our driveway. There are several large trees. I'm concerned about the ecology of the lot. I mean large like it would take two people to get your arms around them, that are along both our driveway and in the very back part of that site. There are, so those are some of the things when I walk down the driveway and look and try to imagine 4 stories of building there, that I find concerning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments? I think Dwight, thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ford Sussman, 19 Seneca Street. I am also part of the Zion Church Group. I am the senior warden. I also appreciate the work that Kristen Scriven and this corporation has done since I last saw it last month. I thought everything was really beautiful. You could see how the comments were taken and changed, and I appreciated the changes. To me, it's still too large, but it's not as large as it was. I also am concerned about the wall next to Zion and how close it would be to a driveway. And I think that the perspective looking down Main Street was not really the perspective one has of driving down Main Street and seeing the church. I don't think that was accurate. Whether or not you go to church, that building has been here since 1833. Okay? We've got Washington Irving, Alexander Hamilton's sons. The tower was erected because to honor the veterans of World War I that died here. We have a garden that honored a member of our church that died in 9/11. So it's also a human place, aside from whether or not you go to church. So it still looks out of perspective to me. And I can't really tell how large it is, how sold to the corporation, I'm not sure quite visually. I mean, I can understand maybe size-wise, but I don't really know what 130 feet is in terms of how it looks now and how it will look. So unless there is a three-dimensional model, it's really hard, or maybe I have to study the surveys or something, because it's really, as a resident, I can't really understand the size and scale. So thank you.
Thank you. Others that wish to speak, either in the audience or on the board? I think we're at a point where we could close the public hearing. We've had at least three meetings with public comment, and we've had a lot of comment, and it's been very helpful comment. So I would move that we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. We're not prepared to take further action tonight.
The project would, of course, have to go to the Architecture and Historic Review Board anyway. This type of project gets a recommendation from the Planning Board and a recommendation from the Architecture and Historic Review Board to the Board of Trustees that makes the final decision. To me, the design of the building has so many strong components to it, and one of the things that needs to be weighed in the balance is the architectural treatment that's proposed, that Christina has put forward, of something that is of high quality from the Architecture and Historic Review Board's point of view, that could partly serve as a guide, because it's the balance between what Rob was talking about and other people have brought about, which is the preservation of the one-story buildings, which have some character, and Rob's idea that maybe we could push another building to the back, versus what's been put forward before us, which deserves at some point a recommendation from us for or against. And so even though they have to go through that track, the one thought I had, which is to go to the Architecture and Historic Review Board anyway, the one thought I had was, should we refer it to them to get their view as to whether there's strong support for this, or there's issues similar to what we've expressed here about the loss of the one-story buildings, and that it's kind of passing the buck a little bit, but at the same time, I think the building that's proposed may be a positive component to the downtown, even though it loses some of the character in the one-story buildings. Or it can be viewed, and the Architecture and Historic Review Board can add into this, it isn't sufficient, that the quality of the building is good, but not good enough to take away the loss of the buildings that we're getting. So that's the one suggestion, is passing the buck, as I said. Or you could just say on your own, you say, well, we take another poll, and if the vote is against the building, I could prepare a resolution for next month to do that. Or if it's in favor of the resolution, it's got to be much more detailed, because we'd have to go through all the different site planning elements to make sure that our recommendation carried everything forward. So those are kind of the two options, I think, that sit in front of you. If you're at that point where you think you know what you want and don't need the Architectural and Historic Review Board, just tell me and we'll prepare the resolution for next month for it. And if you aren't, or would like a little more information or something further down the line related to the architecture or some other component, then we could do that and then have a subsequent meeting next month.
Well, they are going to prepare their recommendation for the Board of Trustees in any case.
Yes.
I mean, that will be the primary thing, so I don't personally see why it needs to affect our taking action if that's what we're prepared to do.
Okay.
I think in this case, with us being just advisory, I'm prepared to support this project at this time.
Okay. What's the vote like, so that the in-between vote, which gives guidance to your staff to help create the resolution? Is there votes, majority in favor of positive recommendation?
I'm prepared to support it too, with the, just looking at the views of Zion is, walked around the area there, and the views that were shown in the presentation were from the sidewalk on the south side of the street. On the north side, it's a little bit, it's a little bit obscure. But with the corner feature, it does a lot to sort of reveal the tower. If the second and third floors of the corner feature were moved back a little bit, I would feel more comfortable with it in terms of revealing, of that reveal of Zion as you walk to the west. Other than that, I think it's meeting the vision plan.
Thank you.
I support the project. I think it's a nice, complement to the historic value of our community, and I think it offers a lot. I understand, there's always gonna be a difference in opinion about how, we should preserve and how we should build, but, in 50, 100 years from now, that building will be historic too, so, I feel like it does add a lot to the community, and hopefully it will set a precedent to other buildings that we eventually may have built, and maybe we can take those architectural details and implement them on buildings that we can preserve in the future. So I support it.
I think you have
Okay.
a sense of the board. So, good. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, procedurally, you'll address this particular issue at your next meeting with this resolution?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for the time. It took a while. I very appreciate it.
Thank you.
The team appreciates it.
Okay.
Thank
good-
you.
Good night.
Thank you for your work. It's really beautiful.
The next item on our agenda, item number 6, is 189 Broadway, continuation of pre-submission conference for proposed minor subdivision and site plan review. Don't look at us. Oh, yeah.
So it's leaving that on the property tax.
I think you have to introduce yourself.
Not to us.
For the 189 Broadway, Howard Development. Ms. Howard is not able to attend tonight. Last meeting, we had a submission for you, and basically we presented two different options, right? This is a large parcel, it's about 38,000 square feet on Broadway. It's immediately south of Sussex Hall
Ed, I think you had an opinion on that, right?
I think there was a majority opinion between, planner, myself, and others that this really doesn't meet the intent of cluster development. So you could still do it with the subdivision and any easements that would be required for parking. But as a subdivision, it could be a totally compliant project, and you could, if he wants to move it over to open up views, you could grant waivers on side yard setbacks. So I think this is doable in the subdivision without any problem.
All right, so let me go through what some of those criteria might be. They are, and it is correct, and we also received a letter from Han Engineering sort of to that effect. So that's fine, basically, in this case, zooming here a little bit. So this is basically transposing the lots, the lot subdivisions from the other plan, and then we sort of see where these things fall, right? So one thing that we think is important is still to preserve the frontage of this flag lot here. So we didn't decrease that. This one is, this property here in front basically pushes over so that obviously it's not achieving the side yard there, for instance. We're pushing it back some, so it's not achieving the rear yard. And then here, we might have an interpretation that, depending on how we classify it, typically, presumably this is the front yard, this is flag. And then, if this is the rear yard, then there's no waiver needed. If this is the rear yard, we might ask to approach someone on that. This is now 15 feet instead of, I think, the required of 25. So, but what this does here, you can really see here probably, but before we came to you and we said, well, from a point here, in this approach, you would increase your viewing angle from 22 to 30. Of course, that seems like, I just want to give a clear understanding of that. Another thing that came up in our last meeting is how much of the sidewalk path do you have a view forward? Right, so in the prior scenario, there was roughly 62 feet, I think it was, of sidewalk length where you could sneak a view of the Hudson. And in this one, it's 100 feet. So, it is a balancing of what these units are able to obtain for the view and what we can share with the community. So I think that's what we would like to get. If I could just confirm that you like this design approach. Obviously, these buildings aren't designed and these are not final, and also that these types of variances and waivers would be acceptable. Of course, the other one is that now you have no driveway onto these properties, and you have, of course, this whole easement. So these properties are requiring an easement of this property to drive onto their property. And, this one has no parking. And so, these 6 spaces, he has an easement for that. And let's say 3 of these cars can be on this property, and the other 3 are, sort of borrowed from that. So it's that kind of borrowing adjustments to achieve this kind of design.
Very interesting, as they would say.
How tall are these buildings, do you think?
These would conform to the sky exposure plan requirements. And, that's another advantage of this approach. Certainly when you get to the back, there's not a lot of place to put the cars. So some of them start going under the building, which, has a, you start to raise the buildings a little bit. So these would be, basically your 2.5-story buildings, and they would, comply with this. As far as we know, they would be able to comply with the sky exposure plan.
That back of the western part of the property is quite a bit lower than, what's the elevation difference between the front and the back?
It drops off, we did a steep slope analysis, and that's part of why this lot is also, bigger, in order to comply with, you have a minimum of 2,500 square feet per unit. So this one, by the time you subtract for the very steep slope here and somewhat steep slope here, you're at 7,600 or something like that. So, really, most of the elevation change happens here in the back.
Oh, so it's pretty level from the front to that rear building?
This is sort of a gentle slope here.
Oh,
And then right here, from about here to this corner, it drops off.
Okay.
More,
Yeah.
And then actually, that's not, even though it seems like we're approaching a
How about the other building, the one on Broadway, Javier? Is that, I mean, you're sort of surrounding it a little bit. I have a little concerns about how intrusive this is going to be on that space.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the siting of this building?
Apartment building?
Both buildings, the large apartment building next door?
Yeah. So this has a sort of a retaining wall here. It gets steeper as you go down here. And so, I think it's worth a site visit, as we get a little further. But, yeah, I mean, I think the lower windows here would be obstructed.
Yeah.
Right now they're totally obstructed by really trees and bushes here. So we're going to clear some of the site. A lot of these were planted by the owner and, come up with a new landscaping plan.
We have an in-house expert here, so.
I don't live on that side of the building. My girlfriends do.
I mean, I think I'll just mention the other criteria that we're, eager to look into is, obviously just solving a lot of the technical issues of the site, fire truck access if that's required or other stuff. We're assuming this will be sort of an LA back here, even though it's not, through it won't be a curb cut, but there will be, possibly some requirement for, if nothing else, bringing your trash cans out to the curb.
Well, currently now, that's all hedges.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're proposing to put an area where they would put their garbage?
No, I mean, I assume they need to bring it out to the curb, and so it's just something that you can pull the trash can across.
So frontage.
Well, go get them.
Okay, all right, so the cluster development, I'm assuming that's the recommendation that's being taken, that we should not pursue cluster, but we'll pursue, since this is achievable, to do it through subdivision, correct?
Right.
And I really appreciate you trying to preserve the view
Yeah.
shed from that area. I mean, the long discussions we had about the development on Livingston Avenue and the view there, make me extra sensitive to that area, to the views of the river in that area.
To that point, does it not, Javier, in terms of opening up the site, what are the implications of bringing the building that's in between the existing building, the one that's sort of the closest to,
This one here?
yeah, of moving that actually forward to closer to Broadway? Does that open up more of the view or obscure it more?
Well, this one is compliant, at least from this corner, is the rear, the front yard
Yeah, it
setback.
would obscure it.
As we're playing with variance, that might be something we want.
I was gonna say, because am I right? I mean, if it came forward, if that building came forward, it seems like it's in a kind of a slight, to me, a kind of a funny spot right now, in terms of its position relative to the apartment building and to the existing building. And I'm wondering if it came forward more, would that actually open up the,
Probably this distance wouldn't increase too much, but we can certainly look at that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Rob. I think your relationship to the street can really be set by the existing buildings, I think. So if you bring the building forward and the setback is similar to what either the apartment building or the existing older house has, probably makes some sense, even though you've got an angled building. We'd have to look at how that works, but it still would, the setback, I think, should be set by what the rest of the street looks like, or the buildings adjacent to it, either there in terms of the front yard.
what's setting it now, Javier? Is there actually a front, are you actually trying to meet a front yard requirement?
No, it's this corner here is
Uh-huh.
the front yard requirement setback.
But we have the prevailing calculation that you could work on to, instead of the regular front yard setback, you could calculate prevailing on that block and probably bring yourself closer to the street.
Yes, I think this existing one here is, on the order of 10 feet or something, so.
You have to get parallelogram-shaped furniture for the place.
Are you committed to the shape of the house or the buildings?
So this was,
Right.
theoretical
Yeah.
discussion.
Conceptual.
We
Yeah.
just want to launch ourselves.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking if the
I like that.
bottom left-hand thing that's jutting out were moved to the top there, it would make even more
Yeah.
visibility.
Well, so part of the thinking was how we divide these into 3 units, so that it's sort of duplex in the front with, views
Yeah,
this
well.
way. Every unit shouldn't be afforded, view.
Mhm,
And these
yeah,
are
whatever.
flats. So it's a little bit
I think Mr. Steinschneider already has a townhouse, Steinschneider already has a townhouse plan for you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a pre-submission conference, and we'll continue. I'm sorry. Well,
Are you going to a public hearing or?
no. We don't have anything to look at. No, we can stay pre-submission if that's fine. Number 7 on the agenda, 7 Fairlawn Avenue, public hearing for site plan approval for proposed in-ground pool and patio. Can we just approve it? I think we do have,
There was something that.
we do have. Yeah, it is a public hearing. While he's getting ready, I move that we open the public hearing. Is there a second? Okay. Yes. Hi.
Trustee Poole, representing Boston. Wanted to be over there on vacation plan, and this Boston wasn't so keen on moving around. So we were here last month about the swimming pool project. Just want to give us a whole list of different things that needed to be changed on the plan, which we corrected, and then you guys have to do stuff on the plan. Really not much to it, really.
Not much to it.
Swimming pool, and
Yeah.
last time over here, we were looking more at, I think we were more interested in the landscaping end of it. I don't know if you got the landscape plan or not.
We did. Do you have a drawing that shows the house and the whole thing?
They gave me this thing, but,
While he's doing that, did we open the public hearing?
Yeah, we
We did, okay. They all run together.
There we go.
There's really nothing here.
No, I found one
We
here.
found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this property abuts Metro North.
Yes.
So it's right on the river.
it was like 100 something feet from the tracks uphill.
Yeah, although it's super steep there.
Very little lawn.
Looks like it's over 41 feet from the adjacent property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that whole side there, I don't know if you're familiar with the site, is all bamboo. You can't even see the house next to it.
Are there concerns, issues?
No.
All engineering,
It's
and
all
George is looking at it.
Yeah.
And
We did provide a follow-up from, but more of its completions and minor issues.
Yeah.
It's not
There really is no issue.
We
for a resolution.
And the lighting issue, I'm just going over the,
We talked about that last month too, the pool is like 13 feet below grade, so there was no issues with flags, there's really not much to plan. If they have a light on the house, you can't see the road anyway, it's so deep down the hole.
but it's all the sort of dark skies lighting requirements anyway, right? It's all down lighting and presumably, is that indicated somewhere?
This landscape plan, you discussed putting some lighting in there, again, all basic stuff on the plan, nothing that's gonna stick up in there.
In lieu of a lighting plan, can we, do we have a lighting plan?
Well, we'll put it on George's list.
Oh, yeah, or just put it in, put it in the resolution that it'll meet your best practices criteria.
Dark skies, everything.
Down lighting, everything's laying down.
Should we close the public hearing?
Yeah, I think we should.
We'll ask
Nobody-
anybody if anybody wants to speak.
You want to second that? Second that?
Anybody to speak on this?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Close the public hearing, I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right. All right, there, we have a resolution here.
Oh, we do?
Yes, of course we do. Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board Resolution granting site plan approval for the construction of an in-ground pool together with related site work at 7 Fairlawn Avenue, whereas Daniel Fostner, owner, has applied for site plan approval to construct an in-ground pool together with related site work in the side yard of his single-family house at 7 Fairlawn Avenue and denoted on tax map, tax assessment maps as section, and gives the description in that way. Whereas the following plans and documents were submitted as part of the application and lists what we've received and reviewed. Whereas the planning board is familiar with a steeply sloped site and surrounding area and the proposed improvement plans, and at their meeting of August 8, 2019, held a duly noticed public hearing and all comments were considered. And whereas the proposed site improvements in this single-family property are a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act and are therefore exempt from further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry hereby grants site plan approval for the subject application conditioned on the following: 1, all applicable provisions of the village, county, and state regulations shall be met. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, all required site plan and village consultant's review fees shall be paid, and all items in the village consulting engineer's memo dated August 1, 2019 shall be addressed to his satisfaction. That's the key one. 3, at the discretion of the village's consulting engineer, a cash site bond shall be posted with the village prior to the commencement of construction to oversee site work and the adequacy of steep slope protection measures. 4, the site landscape plan shall be finalized subject to review and approval by the village's consulting planner. He's taking on all sorts of roles here now. 5, the following language shall be added to the plan: approved subject to all requirements and conditions of an August 8, 2019 resolution of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry, New York. Any change, erasure, modification, or revision to this, of this plan absent reapproval from the planning board shall void this approval. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date of August 8, 2019. I make the motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on this, could I say we may have to add a waiver to this for the code stipulates accessory structures to be a minimum 5 foot from property, side and rear property lines, but not forward of the building. And here we have, it's an odd-shaped lot. You're never going to see it because it's sunk down, but the setback to the front of the building is 20.7, and to the front of the pool is 18.7.
Okay. All right.
So we may have to add a 2-foot waiver to the front yard setback for the pool?
Yeah. Yes.
And I also believe that the memo you're referencing is dated August 6th, not August 1st.
Correct. Yeah, we know that.
Okay.
And we want to add the lighting. language.
Right next to the August 6th, including meeting dark skies requirements.
Right.
Okay,
Based on that,
I make the motion, there's a second.
second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, do you don't have to go to ARB also, or that's it?
Beats me.
That's helpful.
Do you have any raised structures besides patio? What's the lighting, what's the lighting attached to? Yeah.
Lighting? What lighting?
Well, submit that to us, please, and then we'll make that determination.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, 10 Storm Street, public hearing for site plan approval to legalize additional dwelling unit to existing legal three-family dwelling.
Good evening, my name is Joe Kirby, the owner of the property.
Welcome back.
I think we discussed last time the whole issue of the existing four-family house that I'm trying to make legal because we're going for three-family, got the zoning variance, and we're going for planning board because there's a two-car off-street parking there on the neighborhood.
Right. Right. Well, it is what it is. It is what it is. It's not perfect parking, for sure.
No, it's better than most around the area, but not quite there.
Not quite yet. Any board members have any comment on this? If you've been there to see it, it's a interesting, big old house, and it's got parking where it's 3 deep. So, people have to work around that, but, plus 2 street parkings. And somewhere in here, it's gonna say that you're gonna pay money.
It's all that.
It's all done, okay.
So that was my question, but
Okay.
it's in here, I see.
All right. This is a public hearing. Does anybody have anything to say? Questions? No? Thank you. I move we close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye, okay. I make a resolution. Village Dobbs Ferry Planning Board, resolution granting site plan approval for the legalization of a 4th residential unit together with minor site improvements, 10 Storm Street. Whereas Joseph Privera, owner, has applied for site plan approval to legalize an existing 4th residential unit and make minor site improvements to his 3-family property at 10 Storm Street and denoted on tax assessment maps as Section 8, and it gives a description, whereas the following plans and documents were submitted as part of the application and lists what we've reviewed, whereas the planning board is familiar with the site and surrounding area and the proposed improvement plans, and at their meeting of August 6th, it is the 6th? Is that
No,
what
it's
saying?
the 8th.
It's 8th, okay.
The memo.
Who was, the memo, I'm
The
sorry.
memo was the
All right.
This memo is the second.
You're confusing me.
I'm sorry.
Held a duly noticed public hearing, and all comments were considered. Whereas the site cannot accommodate the required 2 additional parking spaces, and the applicant should therefore be required to make payment into the village's payment in lieu of parking pilot program. And whereas the proposed minor site improvements and the addition of a single residential unit is a type 2 action under state Environmental Quality Review Act, and therefore exempt from further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry hereby grants site plan approval for the subject application conditioned on the following: all provisions of the village, county, and state regulations shall be met. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, all required site plan and village consultant review fees shall be paid, and all items in the village consulting engineer's memo dated August 1 shall be addressed to his satisfaction. Prior to the issuance, 3, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy to legalize the 4th dwelling unit, the applicant shall make a one-time payment of $10,000 into the village's PILAP fund. 4, the following language shall be added: approved subject to all requirements and conditions of an August 1
Sorry.
That's
eight. Several of them, they're all eight. It should be eight. That's me. That's real.
I know,
Yeah, okay.
and it's wrong everywhere. Resolution of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry, there, any change, erasure, modification, or revision of this plan absent reapproval from the planning board shall void. Be it therefore resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date of August 8, 2019. I make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Ms. Markowitz has to be crossed off of this, and
Yeah.
Laura is the,
All right, it says, I'm sorry, 9, item 9, 152 Broadway, pre-submission conference site plan review for proposed new driveway drainage repair to existing front wall and parking area. Gentlemen.
Good evening, my name is Dale Greenwald, I'm a resident in 152 Broadway, also known as Washington's headquarters. I'm also president of the homeowners association. We're here tonight to discuss a project that is a drainage maintenance project on our site.
Right.
About 3 years ago, we did some buckling in our roadways and engaged Brooker Engineering, who is with us here tonight, to investigate the causes of the buckling in the roadways, and it ultimately was a series of underground active water sources that were underlying the roadways that needed to be remediated with additional drainage lines and supplementing the structures already on the property. We investigated the site, we did full site surveys of all underground utilities, we did video tracking through all the existing leaders, and came to a great set of conclusions that are identified in these documents. And this is a project that is very important for us to get underway so that we can solve it before we get into the winter months.
Good.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Ross. I'm from Brooker Engineering, and I'm going to use the board tonight. For some reason, the imagery of the PDF is not showing up well. So, as Dale mentioned, this is a housekeeping maintenance type project. I'm not sure how we got to you folks for a project like this, but here we are. So, this project consists of reconnecting existing roof drains. And so there's really two types of roof drains. There's roof drains that discharge through drainage structures, and then there's other roof drains that daylight, and we are preserving that arrangement. So there's no change. It's maintenance. It's where the downspouts connect to the underground system, and they weren't maintained, and so they need to be replaced. That's what we're doing, is replacing roof drains.
Yeah.
The other one, as Dale mentioned, is that this site is subject to groundwater and groundwater pressure, such that it destroys the pavement. And if they were to replace the pavement, it would just continue to be ruined. And so, in order to cure the issue, you have to cure the groundwater so that you can repave the site and go on. And so, we have proposed a network of perforated pipes under drains surrounded by crushed stone envelopes. And that's the project. Roof drain reconnections and under drains below the pavement. We received some comments from your consulting engineer. There's 3 comments. We have no problem with any of them. And so the first one we've addressed tonight, which is really the consistency of roof drains in terms of where they discharge. Make sure the ones that go basins continue to go basins, the ones that daylight continue to daylight. The next one is inspection ports and clean out accesses. We agree with that, and we can make that a condition. And the third one is the coastal assessment form should be fully completed. I believe that the signature was missing, and we're happy to provide that as well. This, as I mentioned, this is a housekeeping maintenance type item, and so as such, this is not subject to seeker, does not require an EAF, and so there's really no environmental
Are there any questions?
Is there any, is this waivable?
So the reason this is here is because the code says that any project that disturbs more than 300 cubic feet of soil needs site plan review. So that's why it's here. George has already looked at it. He's made comments. They've agreed to them. Totally waivable.
I have a question. We know where that water comes from Colonial Springs. You know, it goes under the aqueduct, comes out near your swimming pool. Does that go under the swimming pool and then under your parking lot? And then where does it go after that?
The water goes down along the side of the swimming pool,
Uh-huh.
under the roadway, the water goes down along the side.
So it's actually, it's daylighted on the side of the swimming pool?
Not daylight,
Oh,
it's
okay.
getting, piping closure.
Oh, okay.
Piping closure.
Yeah.
Follows the side of the pool, it goes into a little bit of a stream, and then into the retaining pond. From the retaining pond, it goes onto the roadway through another tube, and then it ends up, dropping down to Broadway, and into Broadway into, along to the Hudson.
Because, yeah, we know, you know,
That's one source.
we know upstream where there's a lot more water pressure coming down that way. So that in addition to the roof leaders is the problem you're saying. Okay.
And also the cleanouts which were requested, most of them have already been put in because we did the observations,
Uh-huh.
tracking all the leaders.
Right.
Cleanouts to get.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So,
since they're not altering any drainage patterns, that's one of the key issues.
Yeah.
If they're not altering anything or diverting into someone's property or increasing or changing anything, like you mentioned, they're maintaining their existing condition.
Well, but they are gonna be concentrating the water flows, right?
Removing the groundwater, it'll be a constant flow, it probably wouldn't be that much, they'll be sized properly to continue to take it away, so it wouldn't be adding extra storm surge or anything like that.
That's correct, and they would be seasonal. Really, they would really flow in the springtime and maybe a little bit in the winter, but what tends to happen is under drains in installations like this, they typically, over time, will lower the groundwater permanently.
I guess my question is just where, you know, if you're gonna collect this water into pipes, where do those pipes eventually dump that water that you collected?
Oh, it goes into the drainage system.
Into the storm sewers for the village?
Storm drain, yes.
Okay. And there's capacity for that?
Well, that's what we're saying,
No change.
Yeah, so the water is getting there, it's finding its route now and it's getting there, but now they're just giving it a better path.
Well, but right now, that water is not ending up in the storm drains because it's, you know, it's causing problems.
It's getting there more slowly, but as mentioned, it'll drop. The whole groundwater will drop over time, and those pipes will be empty.
As long as
Like-
you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's not gonna, and the amount that goes in there will be not that significant.
Okay.
okay,
Wait a minute.
yeah,
Let's waive it.
yeah. I move that we waive the, I don't know what I'm waiving, waiving the need to be here.
Second?
Yeah. 152 Broadway.
Too bad we couldn't tell you that about 3 hours ago.
We saw some great presentations. Thank you.
We're gonna discuss demapped roads.
I don't know,
Yeah, what is that about?
I don't know.
Because I have my folder from 2004 when I demapped the roads.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I
Well,
would
well,
I would benefit from seeing some of that, because no one can seem to find any files.
Hasn't there always been an issue that the roads were demapped, but the property wasn't actually disposed of?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about this for years.
And now we're trying to find the files so
We're
we
trying to
can go
find the
back
files.
and discuss how to finish this
I
up.
see.
So
How
it
far they got.
seems previous council may have misplaced, or?
I see, so so we need more time to get our ducks in a row?
I believe Mr. Posen had requested some time to see if there was a way of retrieving the official documentation. So
Yeah, I don't have that.
we can provide the necessary advice on the next steps. And I think today they just asked for sort of a memo with the bullet-pointed roadmap between, you have a street and now it's demapped, and what the next steps are. So we're going to be doing that, but in the meantime, we're just trying to confirm, because it wasn't our work product, that the process was followed in accordance with the statute, and then we could be assured that it's appropriate at this time for you to take that next step. And that's our hang-up, because we can't find the proof of the seeker, we can't find proof of the title reports and the notices to interested parties, and, I mean, it's a common occurrence in municipalities when a paper street is demapped, but we just want to make sure that the ducks were in a row.
So there's nothing for us to do until you do that?
Nothing for us to do.
Well,
That means we get to go home?
when I sold my house, it was on Briary Road, and I had a paper street behind me, and half of that paper street is now in new owners. of the
Well,
house.
that's what was likely supposed to happen, but
But I
that
don't
actually
know.
didn't happen, is what it sounds like.
So who actually is paying the taxes?
Well, that's just all what they're trying to clean up.
It's in limbo.
Yes.
Yep.
It's
That
just-
property's floating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Way back
Call up
when you
Patty.
conveyed property, you conveyed to the middle point of the street.
Right.
And we just want to make sure that there isn't, some of these may have already just conveyed by operation of law. So we're just trying to find out if it's necessary for us to do a transaction, or whether by operation of law, since a deed in the chain of title conveyed to the center line.
Right.
If that's the case, we're done. If it's not the case, then we want to make sure we're providing you with the transactional documents you need to offer them to the adjacent property ownership, to whomever, for whatever reason.
Roughly how many paper streets are
It's a
there?
lot.
I think,
I can't remember.
I don't know, because I don't have a file.
Was it something like 30 or 40?
There was a
something
lot.
like that?
There's a
But-
lot. I remember that.
I think that, we think that they demapped the streets without the next step, which
That's
has,
right.
which is mentioned, that transferring the property to other people. So that's why we've had these come in over the years, and they almost always are problematic. So the latest one is the 23 Manor.
Yeah.
Right.
So, if it's all right, I'd like to keep it on the agenda, because
Yes.
it needs to be, we'll never know when the next one comes in for some new driveway that nobody really should build or do whatever, something, so.
In the meantime, we'll continue to try to retrieve those necessary documents so we can assure ourselves that you're ready to go. And I'd love to know how many of them were deemed owned to the middle of the street. Because at some point in the chain of title, it stopped saying that, and it started to say, you're granted whatever rights the grantor had in the bed of the street. So it's a mapped street, and at some point, the next deed holder just owned up to the middle, and then you're fine, but without having a look-see at whatever the title report said or what the deed said, we can't provide that advice with any amount of certainty. It would be,
I hope this is not the case, but the only recollection is, I think I saw a resolution which just demapped 40 streets or whatever it was, and that's all it did. So I don't,
That's what I-
that recollection could be off, but if that's correct, then none of the steps you talked about, of deeds or transferring title or doing any of that stuff happened. That's what I think happened, but that's the research you're looking into.
that's correct. And we were asked today to provide a memo just with bullet pointed, like this was the step 1, this was step 2, and you think you're at step 6, so we really need to see where the files are.
Wow. DMZ.
If that was step 6, it might have been just step 1, demap the streets and whatever could have been done, seeker or anything else like that, just went right to 6 and skipped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Then we might have to
You
start.
might want to backtrack and do the whole
Yeah.
thing over again, yeah.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but that's was my
Okay.
quick sense.
I appreciate that.
2005.
Is it raining?
Yeah, we have the minutes, we have copies of the, I looked those up, they're fine.
Yeah.
It's just the
I don't
file.
have, I don't have any.
They're very strict steps in the demapping process, and unless they're followed,
Yeah,
you can quit claim to the cows
All
come
right,
home.
good call
but-
for
we'll see.
end of the meeting.
I second the end of the meeting.
Yeah.